Being a project manager is exciting in the engineering world. There are so many different interesting projects out there. But how about global offshore wind projects and managing those types of projects? Think about all the moving parts, the complexity, the risks involved. Well, in today's episode, I have with me Alejandro Jimenez. Alejandro is a project manager. He's also an engineer in the offshore wind world. And he's going to talk to us about some of the opportunities, and there's a lot of them out there, but also what goes into managing these types of projects. Let's jump right in. All right, now I want to welcome our guest onto the show for today, Alejandro Jimenez, Head of Project Development for Global Offshore Wind Projects at US Solutions. Alejandro, welcome to the Engineering Project Management Podcast.
Hi, Anthony. A pleasure to be here.
So, Alejandro, before we get started talking about project management, let's talk a little bit about your career journey. You're from Spain originally. You lived in London at one time for about 5 years. You have degrees both in civil and mechanical engineering. Take us through your kind of path to how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll try to do. And we'll try to do it briefly. Well, I started studying mechanical engineer. I always had clear I wanted to be an engineer, but when the time comes, similarly to a lot of us, I guess, is you're not sure which field of engineering you want to specialize in. So I went for mechanical engineering. I said, okay, that's what I want to do. I do like it, but when I was finishing the degree, I realized that maybe bigger projects, that's what I like. I mean, bigger projects. With bigger, I mean like civil projects, such as, highways, dams, all this sort of stuff, airports, like they are bigger in scale, not necessarily in complexity, obviously. And I said, okay, what do I do? Should I go for a master's into mechanical engineering to complete my education, or should I do one step back, yes, to do what I want to do? And I say, okay, hell, let's do civil engineering. So when I finished mechanical engineering, because I realized about that when it was just 1 year to be done with mechanical engineering. So I said, okay, let's finish it just in case. So I did it, and then I came back to civil engineering, and I did civil engineering. And when I was finishing it, that's when I started working, because I got an opportunity from an oil and gas company in London, Saipem, which at that time was part of Eni, the oil and gas company. And they offered me a job to do offshore energy engineering in there. I was still finishing my degree, but I said, okay, you're a mechanical engineer, you already have your degree, you can start with us if you want to. So I said, okay, let's do it. So I started working whilst I was finishing civil engineer. And in the middle, I took on the hiatus on civil engineering because I did a master's too in project management. So yeah, not that I wanted, but I mean, I was lucky to join a company such a moment that they had the means, to offer further education to the graduates, and they offered me a master's, so I went for it. So long story short, I finished the master's, also civil engineering. And when people ask me, which are you an engineer? I say, yes, I'm a civil engineer. I don't go with all of this stuff because it's too long, but yeah.
So tell me how you found solar. How'd you end up getting into wind and solar? How'd that happen?
Well, the moment I landed on the offshore energy industry with oil and gas at the beginning, the first 2 years in Saipem, I immediately fell in love with it. It's really amazing for an engineer, the complexity, the size of the projects, how many things are going on, and then if you have the opportunity to go there to see the projects being built, it's incredible. So I said, okay, this is what I want to do. But then there were a lot of opportunities coming in offshore wind, and it was getting a big momentum. And at some point I said, okay, first professionally, because there are going to be a lot of opportunities, but also, I mean, personally, I prefer to be part of the renewable energy industry than the oil and gas industry. Nothing against the oil and gas industry, but that was my preference. So there was a very good opportunity coming from Iberdrola, Scottish Power, in the UK, and I took it, and that's how I landed into the renewable energy industry. It was like 7.5 years ago. So I started in offshore wind at that moment, and up to this point, I mean, now I'm not working in Iberdrola anymore at US Solutions, but I'm in the same industry, and different roles, different experiences, different countries. But yeah, that's to summarize how I landed in there.
So tell us about offshore wind projects. What do they entail for engineers that are listening, maybe that aren't that familiar with those types of projects? What are the kinds of things that go into those projects?
Because first of all, I think I mean, a lot of people know what's offshore wind, but I mean, just for the basics, offshore wind is quite similar in terms of, I mean, if you're an investor and you're looking for what's the difference between onshore and offshore wind, the first concept is that offshore wind is it's the wind reaches a higher and more constant speed than on land because there are no barriers. So it's more predictable. Basically, the projects are more, I won't say easy to finance because maybe I enter muddy waters in there, but I say that they are quite easy to organize and to get financing if you have a sound project. So what entails an offshore wind project? They are very long, large projects. They can be understood as long, depending on what you compare them with. There are large sums of money involved. The capex and the opex figures are very, very large. There are a lot of stakeholders involved, tier one contractors, the developer, investors, government bodies, etc. And yeah, I would say that for me the biggest two characteristics are the time for the project. You can easily go into 10 to 12 years of a project. Wow. I mean, not execute. I mean, of course, you have the leasing stage, which is 2 years, the leasing of the seabed. Then 4 years for consenting, 2 years for the financial close, and then another 3 years for installation. And then you have, I mean, your project is built and you have it in operation. We're trying now to reduce the consenting stage because it's unnecessarily long, but that's another discussion. But yeah, they're quite long, and the money involved with these projects is quite large. The average in 2021, looking to my notes for this talk now, is like 2.8 million US dollar per each megawatt. So if we're talking about a 1 gigawatt offshore wind farm, we could be talking in a range of 2.5 to 3K million dollars per project. So
wow. Yeah, big project. So let's go back first, just like you said with the offshore. So in terms of where they put the wind, where they put these structures, you said the seabed. Is it an island? Is it, how do you secure property? How does that work? Tell us where they actually put the wind structures.
Well, the typical offshore wind farm that you can find, and still they are the most typical ones being planned, are the fixed foundations. Basically, this means that you have your seabed is your water depth is normally not bigger than deeper than 50 meters. Okay. So you, in terms of technology and the capex that you're spending on that, you can put like different solutions for a fixed foundation, such as jacket foundation and monopile foundation, suction bucket. So basically, the turbine goes fixed into the seabed. However, we are living now the boom of the floating offshore wind. There are a lot of areas with very good wind resource where water depths won't allow for fixed foundations, but for floating foundations. The issue was the technology. I mean, it's not the same. I would say it's a little bit more complex to have a floating foundation and make it work and to be reliable and to have a fixed foundation. So there was a challenge there, but there are quite a few technologies at the moment which are reliable and they are already proven in projects, which make floating offshore wind viable. However, the costs are also going down. The cost of a floating offshore wind project is bigger than a fixed project, but we're going to see a lot of floating projects in the next few years. I'm from Spain, and in Spain we cannot have fixed offshore fixed foundations for offshore wind, at least in the areas where you can build offshore. So we need to go for floating, and the same is happening with a lot of very interesting areas such as California, Japan, etc., etc. So yeah.
So when you do install these into the seabed, when you mentioned that the process of getting permission in the beginning, right? So it's like the country that it's closest to, or who's the governing body there?
Yeah, well, it's I mean, if long story short is what you're saying. It's the country. I mean, the country you need to. That's the area. I mean, how it works is that the country that is the waters from which the country who owns those waters they can go through different processes, but a typical process is to say, okay, we want to develop offshore wind, so let's do a seabed lease for different companies, see who is going to be leasing the seabed to build offshore wind. And then you enter into different processes, such as once a company, let's say, look at the East Coast of the United States. We had recently the New York Bight lease auction, and several companies they went into that competitive process, and they won the rights to have the lease those areas,
Wow.
basically. So they can lease. So immediately, I mean, you need to interface with the government bodies who are dealing with those areas in order to get the permits to build offshore wind. And I'm not talking about the tariff or the grid connection, because it's linked, but it's a different story. I'm just talking about the area.
The area where you could put it.
So the initiative is done by the government. Then the government, we are seeing the same in India right now. A few months ago, India said, we want to develop offshore wind in the south of India, in the Tamil Nadu area. These are the zones that we are going to be developing offshore wind. We want to hear you out. And we are going to be launching a competitive tender auction for leasing the seabed.
Wow. Yeah. So is there like a distance that they have to be offshore? Like, what's the distance?
I mean, the answer to that is no, but yes, I will explain. Technology-wise, if you can do it whenever is feasible, and next 100 meters from the coast, you probably can do it. But you need to take into consideration environmental and social aspects. So if you put it too close to the coast, you are going to have a big visual impact that is not, a lot of people is not going to be happy about that. So you want to put it far away from that. Then the winds, I mean, normally if you go farther away from the coast, probably you're going to have more reliable winds in terms of direction and consistency. Then also the coast environmentally is more sensible than when you go deeper into farther into the sea. You have more protected areas. You have all the fishing areas too, etc. So you can see, when you see a map with the zonification of all the different social and environmental aspects, you normally see that if you go farther from the coast, it's better. However, you need to have an equilibrium of, if you go very far, then you need to go for floating wind normally rather than fixed. And also the connectivity to the grid is an issue. If you go 100 kilometers away from the coast, you need to do 100 kilometers export cables with all the problems that entails, and the cost, massive costs.
So there's a lot of different things.
30 kilometers could be a typical offshore wind farm.
Okay.
Away from the coast. So
what are some of the risks of these projects?
Risk, well, so if we're talking about similar projects which are not exactly offshore wind, I would say that the size of these projects is that large that planning is key. So you take the risk of not taking everything into consideration. And then if we go into the specific challenges that we're facing in the industry right now of these projects, I mean, of course, reaching FID is always a challenge for a project with all this size. But during the execution stage, the projects are more tangible. There are a lot of tier one contractors and their multi-million contracts working together. It concludes with the offshore installation, but the offshore installation is the conclusion of a few years of planification, onshore construction, etc. Technical challenges are huge. Health and safety is paramount. At sea, there are a lot of things that could go wrong, and we don't take these issues slightly. They are very serious. And any unexpected problem, even let's say you need to install a turbine and you're missing a few key pieces, even bolts. You're missing bolts. You need to wait till the bolts are procured and brought from onshore, and you need to put a lot of parts of the project on hold for maybe one day. And the daily cost of one of these vessels could be, I mean, the large vessels could reach, the vessel spread $500,000 per day.
Wow.
So
yeah, I guess when you think about it, there's really, the sea is one of the most variable things in nature. So when you're dealing with that kind of variability on a project like this, it can be extremely challenging. And when we talk about, project management, you've worked on a lot of these projects that are very complex. They're multi-million dollars, like you said, could be hundreds of millions of dollars. What are some of the project management related challenges that one might face on a project like this?
Risk and opportunities management
Hmm.
could be one. And I tend to think, I mean, I've been 10, 11 years working in the industry. There are a lot of project managers with more experience than me. I mean, not in the industry, but in other industries. So probably they know better. But what I see is that you tend to look to the risks very carefully, but you overlook the opportunities sometimes. And opportunities are there. If you really put careful planning to look into all opportunities, you can easily save millions in one project. You can reduce the schedule of one project. You can, I don't know, optimize the project up to the extent that it's easier. You get a project to be easier just due to the opportunities. And then, of course, the program management, planning, proper planning, having people who is looking to, I mean, the planning, also cost control planning. What we call the project office, which gets involved with the costs management, program management, reasonable. I think that's one of the main foundations for a successful project. And but in these ones, I think it's even more important due to the doing a lot of years work being concluded in just 1 year of offshore installation, 1.5 years or so, and everything needs to be perfectly tuned and technical, contractual, commercial, everything needs to be working just fine. So careful planning is key.
Lots of moving parts, yeah. And I think what's interesting about that is I think when you think about project management, a lot of times we're talking about, the things that could go wrong, scope creep, scheduling, budgeting. But I like your comment there. Like if you optimize your projects and when you do multiple projects, you can start to figure out ways to do them better and faster and, maybe put some systems in place to make the projects go smoother. And I think as a project manager, we should all be looking at trying to optimize our projects so that we can continue to get better and more efficient at managing projects because, budgets are tight. There's lots of risks and the more optimized you can be, the better you can be as a project manager. So let's talk a little bit about career development, Alejandro. What recommendations do you have for someone, working in, let's say, wind industry in terms of growing their careers based on your career journey? Like, what are some of the things you've done to try to grow?
Well, offshore wind is such an exciting industry. I mean, that's how I see it. So my first recommendation is to be eager to learn more and more, to go offshore when the opportunity is there, because that's where you learn the most, when you really see things happening. Get as much involved as possible. And I think this recommendation might not be needed for people who is already in the industry, because most people I know in the industry are very passionate about this. So, but yeah, that's something that there are a lot of opportunities in this industry. So if you get very involved, you will find opportunities yourself. You don't really need to scratch a lot. It's already there. I have to say too that people management skills are important. Those projects entail a lot of people, not just from your colleagues who work daily with you, but a lot of stakeholders, large groups of people working together to get it done. You can easily, if you are the developer, the consultants, the contractors, the offshore people, all of them doing the execution stage, you can very easily have 1,500 people working in the project simultaneously. So, wow. So yeah, people management skills are very important. Go get your colleagues, your industry. Then also go to industry seminars, go to conferences if you can. The market is booming with new jobs, and having a good network is going to open a lot of doors for new exciting opportunities. So that's another tip. Yeah,
that's great. And in terms of the wind industry, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of jobs in this industry in the next few years for engineers.
Yeah, it is. The industry is at the point, while it's still young, there's already a solid knowledge and organizational base to make things easy for those who really want to be in. and we need professionals. We really need professionals. And actually, I want to say that one of the main challenges from the industry probably is going to be the lack of professionals. There is a lot of demand, and I don't think there are enough professionals to satisfy all such demand. So if anyone doing an engineering degree at this moment, or anyone trying to change the industry, wants to get into an industry which is solid and there's not going to be any problem with job, with getting the job, this industry is definitely one.
So what would you say like is the best like degree to go into wind with? You have mechanical, you have civil. Does it matter, or how does it?
To get in, we typically see civil engineers, naval engineers,
Naval. Okay.
mechanical engineers, but also I have seen a lot of electrical engineers. You think about it, I mean, offshore wind, you generate energy, so you need electrical engineers.
Sure.
Any engineering degree is good, as
Okay.
long as then you get the skills whilst working in the industry. I think there's room for everyone, even communication, the telco, SCADA engineers, everything. I mean, everything. But the typical ones I've seen the most is naval, civil, and mechanical. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, one other question I want to ask you, because we get questions from a lot of engineers who want to work internationally, right? Whether it's maybe they're in the US, they want to work international. In terms of like language, obviously you're from Spain, you obviously speak very good English. Do a lot of these projects, these global projects, I would imagine they're done in English?
Yeah, English is the language for offshore wind. When you, of course, you don't need to, you need to take into account that if you are, for example, doing an offshore wind project in Vietnam, you need people managing the site who can speak the local language. But for if we're talking about project management, I mean, if you don't speak English, you are, sorry for my friends, but you're screwed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but if it's someone in the US, let's say, and they're going to do a project, let's say in another country like India or something, like you mentioned earlier, they're probably going to need someone on their team that can speak to the ground crews in the local
Yeah.
languages, correct?
Yeah, correct. Normally you do this on a project, I mean, project per project basis. So if you're gonna be developing a project in India, you need to build a strong team in there who can communicate, because it's not only white collar jobs, it's blue collar. Most of the works are blue collar.
Sure.
And a lot of them are just gonna be speak the local language. So you of course need to communicate effectively with them. So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's another, listen, these are very complex projects. Obviously, there's lots of things going on. Like Alejandro has explained to us, you have a lot of risks inherent in these projects. But I think as a project manager, as an engineer, these projects sound very exciting to me because there are a lot of different things to think about. There are a lot of opportunities, like Alejandro said. And really, you really have to be a leader of people as well and be able to manage people effectively, like Alejandro said, because you're dealing with, there's could be 1,000+ people involved in one project, and these could be people in different languages, different locations, doing different things. So really these wind projects can be really requires a lot of project management. And if you can optimize it in any sense, it's really the way to go. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a very short break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to wrap up with our PM Pitfall. All right, we are back with Alejandro Jimenez, Head of Project Development for Global Offshore Wind. We're talking a lot about offshore wind projects, how complex they are. So, Alejandro, just to kind of wrap us up for today, what is kind of one of the biggest PM pitfalls or challenges that you've seen working as a project manager, and what can project managers do to try to avoid that or deal with that?
Yeah, well, one thing I can think about is no matter how good you plan for a project and for things to happen smoothly and sound, PMs end up working much more than we expect during the critical phases of the project. And we tend to underestimate the level of involvement that project managers are going to have at certain stages of the project. Because in an ideal world, I mean, a good project manager is good when handing things and moving the work around and, like not doing micromanagement. And that's how it needs to be done. But up to some point, and when there is an issue during a critical part of the project, the PM is not going to look aside. We are going to get involved. And we always underestimate that. So my recommendation is don't, a team of PMs is never short enough. It's not never small enough, sorry, during the execution stage, of course, up to some extent. And you always need to have the right people in the right place, or otherwise you're gonna end up managing things from a position where you don't want to be. So I will summarize this in the PM who is being involved in doing all the work and all the teams surrounding these guys. Don't leave the team to get shorter when you think there's going to be less work, because that's not going to happen. The moment when that's going to happen is when the project is handed over. I think the last part of my explanation is horrible. Sorry, Anthony, but I don't know if you got my point.
No, I mean, I think for sure. I think a lot of times as project managers, we do underestimate the effort that it's going to take on our own part, right? We're thinking like our team will handle it. We'll manage the team's going to get it done. But things happen on projects, things go wrong. You have to jump in, you have to talk to clients, you have to come out to the site and try to fix something or look at something. Somebody can't figure it out, and everyone's looking at you to get it done, to solve the problem. So I definitely understand what you're saying, Alejandro. And I think that good project managers assume that they're going to have to get involved in their projects. They may have to get heavily involved in their projects at times. And I think it really goes back to what you said earlier, is your ability to interact with people effectively is going to help you to be a great project manager, because you will have to get pulled into your projects. But if you can manage people, lead people effectively, you may be able to get more help from them, which is going to be very beneficial in the long run. So listen, it was great to hear from Alejandro. It was very interesting to hear about these offshore wind projects. They are going to be a lot of them going forward. It's going to be a busy industry. There are a lot of jobs out there if you're interested in getting into the industry. And it sounds like you can pretty much get into that industry with any type of engineering degree, as long as you're willing to learn kind of on the job and progress. There's opportunity. So Alejandro, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Engineering Project Management Podcast.
Thank you very much, Anthony. A pleasure to be here.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Alejandro. Really interesting stuff. I really liked what he said about optimizing your projects, right? We always think about what's going wrong as PMs, but what about optimizing our project management procedures so we can manage projects better? And when you talk about optimizing on a $100 million project, you're saving a lot of money. So please consider subscribing to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better project managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.